Welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, where today we will be discussing Masonic travel.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our thoughts and opinions are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions via our website at theworkingtoolspodcast.com.
Today on the Working Tools Podcast, we have three of our four usual hosts. We have Brother Craig Graham from Kalamalka Lodge number 160 in Vernon, British Columbia. Very worshipful Brother Stephen Chung from Prince Charles 153 in Kelowna, BC. And I'm Matt Appel. I'm from Mill Creek 243. We are in Motley Terrace, Washington. And I should say that Steve is at the Mobile Masonic Command because he is actually traveling. So, Steve, where are you and what's going on?
Actually, I'm in Mazatlan, Matt. I down here for holidays with the wife for a week and take care of a little Masonic business while I'm at it, if I can. Long story short, about a year ago, right about a year ago, I got a phone call from a brother who was vacationing down here in Mazatlan. And that call was to come and bring him an oxygen concentrator and bring him home because he found out he had lung cancer. And shortly thereafter, he passed from lung cancer back home. And during that process, when I was here, because we had to wait a week for the flight home because he couldn't do multiple flights. He could only do one. So I got to go to lodge while I was here. And the other brother that he was renting a place with, he took me to lodge and I got to enjoy the brotherhood here in Mazatlan. And then before Bill passed, he asked if I would take some of his ashes back and give them to the brothers down in Mazatlan. They had a place in their lodge hall where they stored such ashes that were brought to them. I thought
they have an actual ossuary down there.
If that's the word for it, yep.
Yeah, that's that.
So they. I've reached out to them through the Facebook group because I don't have anybody's WhatsApp contact because Bill and Craig had that. And I thought, no problem, I'll get it from Craig. But then all of a sudden in April, Craig died of a heart attack. So, So anyways, I reached out through the Facebook page. Hopefully they can reach out while I'm here and I can meet up and give that to them.
Just to make sure I'm clear on this, we're not talking about the Craig who's currently wearing the Memento Mori shirt. He's not that.
Correct. Brother Craig Whipple from Cascade, I think it's 120 in Calgary. Or Cascade 20 something like that. They were traveling buddies and they would winter down here. They actually were in Puerto Vallarta for a few years prior, and they actually helped get a lodge started down there and get it all set up, sanctioned, and the whole 9 yards. So then they came here to Mazatlan for that last year.
So is it? I'm trying to wrap my brain around them accepting the ashes of a deceased person. Do they have so they have a place to store them? Obviously, is it like, do many visiting brothers do this, or is it something that's relatively common in Mexico? Or
I don't know if it's common or not. What I know is that they had this place, which I saw while I was there, and I thought it was interesting that they had it. But of course, they speak Spanish. I don't, and I didn't really get a deep explanation of it, other than from Craig, who told me, the brothers here, when they pass, if they get a memento from them, from the family, then they just store it here in their archives. That was rather touching, right? And so failing that, I guess I'll dig a hole in the sand and put Bill there. And at least that way he'll be down here in Mazatlan, and that's where he wanted to be. So,
Yeah, if I had to speculate, I would imagine that they have something set up where, primarily for their members. And I bet it's probably in a kind of an out of the way place in their lodge building, but no less venerated for that. It's just that it's I wouldn't be surprised if they had an ossuary or some sort of a memorial wall or something where the ashes of long-standing brethren in that lodge were kept. Had you visited a lodge down there in that time, Steve?
yeah, just that lodge. Yeah.
Okay, like attended a lodge meeting or just gone to the building?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I attended a meeting there. Yeah.
Okay. And it was in Spanish?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Love to see it, because I think most of the Mexican jurisdictions use what's actually called the Scottish Rite craft ritual, which is the first 3 degrees of the 33-degree system, and they'd be it's on my bucket list anyways to get to something like that somewhere in Central or South America.
Yeah. They also do that work in Cuba.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's how I know what you're talking about is when I went to Cuba, they did that, and I inquired, and that's what I found out too. So, but
yeah.
And I think parts of Louisiana. I think there's a handful of lodges in Louisiana. If you're looking to listen to it in English, I think there's a handful of Scottish Rite lodges in Louisiana.
Yeah, I think in Louisiana they call them the Red Lodges, and I think there's one district in the grand jurisdiction there around New Orleans somewhere that's known for it. Again, something on the Masonic travel bucket list.
yes.
So.
Well, I've traveled many places and attended lodge in many different places. So I highly recommend it to any brother who hasn't. Go do it. Even, foreign languages, forget. You follow what's going on by watching, and it's not that different, right? If you've been around lodge long enough, you can identify whether or not they're doing that funny Canadian work type stuff, or if they're doing the Scottish Rite type stuff or the ancient stuff. But more importantly, you can follow along. Let me see. I've been to lodge in Cuba a few times. I've been to lodge here in Mexico. What was that?
You've been in Italy, haven't you, Steve?
And Italy, yes. And of course, wherever I travel, I try to, make time to visit a lodge, and my wife lets me, which is rather nice because most wives aren't as forgiving that way, but mine knows that this is my life and my social circle, so I get the grace to do it.
Steve, when you visited in Italy, was it an English language lodge or was it in Italian?
That one was the only English language lodge. They actually were a military lodge, and they so they had a lot of transient. So their lodge officers were always fill-ins. I thought it was rather interesting that way, but it's kind of like, I don't know, it's no different than going to an older lodge here where there's different fill-ins all the time, right? For the different lodge officers in the primary positions, right? They've got their 4 stable people that live there, and then as guys get transferred, they go. But those are the places I've gone and visited. but I go, up and down the valley, anywhere in the jurisdiction. I love to travel and I love to visit. That's the most exciting part of Freemasonry, I think, because I make sure I make time for the festive boards so that I can get the social time in and get to know a couple of the brothers where I'm visiting.
Yeah, yeah. My one foray into long distance visiting was when I was much younger. It was in the mid '90s. I went on a family trip to England, and I took my suit and my regalia with me. And I asked we're staying in a small town in I forget what county in England it was. It had been, I think it was Oxfordshire now, but historically it was Berkshire, and that was the local English Grand Lodge that it was under, the provincial Grand Lodge of Berkshire, a place called Wantage. And I visited Lloyd Lindsay Lodge. I can't remember the number, but I think it was, being an English lodge, it was well into the four digits. Was the warrant number. But they just had a regular meeting. It was a neighbor of the woman I was staying with. She knew he was a Mason and approached him before I got there, because I'd said, if you know anybody who's a Freemason, could you tell them that you've got one coming from Canada? And sure enough, I was told when I got there when I would be going to lodge and who I'd be going with. And he came and picked me up, and we went to this beautiful lodge hall. It was in an old church right in the center of town, and no degree or anything like that. It was just sort of a regular meeting for them, and I saw how different, how familiar certain things were to me, and yet how different they were, especially the festive board, which in this small country town in England, after just a regular meeting, they sat down to a full three-course meal, like a full catered banquet. And it was a very the festive board was run by a head table very well. But there was almost like it was ritual attached to it. The master sat at the head of the table in the east. The wardens were at either the table was organized into two columns. The wardens were at either end of their respective columns, and there was a lot of gaveling, a lot of standing, a lot of clapping, and there was a whole system of
Set up like a true table lodge.
Yeah, very much so. But I gather that's a very common occurrence in England, because in a lot of places their lodges meet far less often than ours do. Like, we meet once a month, 10 times a year. Their lodges might only meet 4, 5, or 6 times a year. And so it's a bit more of an event when the lodge gets together. And they have these, it was a great meal. First time in my life I'd ever eaten profiteroles for dessert. I didn't even know what they were called. My tacky colonial ways, I just thought it was cream puffs, but that was a whole stuff.
Yeah, it's actually, I'm going to be, I think we're going to London, England in May, and Paris. And I was talking with Trevor McEwen, who's going to get me my letter of introduction ready.
Okay.
But he said, let me know when you're going, because you go to the Grand Lodge of England building, and there is meetings happening there every night of the week. But not every meeting you can go to, because a lot of them are dinner lodges where they have the dinner beforehand, and they don't have limited seating for their meals. So you either have to plan it well in advance or be very lucky that way. So yeah. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. I'd love to know what lodge you get to as well, because there's, under the Grand Lodge of England, there's a lodge just isn't a lodge. There's often something else going on, like it's an affinity lodge, and all the brethren have a particular interest that they've gotten together to pursue together, or it's there's a lot of things like that in England. So that you'll come away from there with some good stories, and you'll be seeing the Grand Lodge building on Queen Street as well. So that in and of itself is worth the trip. I tried getting a tour of the Grand Lodge building in New York 2 years ago when I was there in the summertime, but I phoned. No one answered the phone, and I left a message and sent an email, but I think they were still a little disorganized coming out of COVID that year. But I would have loved to have taken a tour of that edifice as well.
Have you traveled anywhere, Matt? Visited?
I've I've actually attended lodges in nowhere outside of the U.S. and BC. I've toured a couple of buildings. I actually went to the Grand Lodge of England building y'all were just talking about, and unfortunately they weren't doing tours that day. So I suggest if you want to have a tour, figure out what their tour schedule is before you go, because we were only in England or in London rather, for a couple of nights, and unfortunately it did not coincide with when the tours were, so I didn't get to see much of it. Although they do have a cafe there. We went and had a coffee in the cafe, and they put a little square and compass on the foam on top of the fancy coffee drink. So that was pretty funny, but it was really neat building, even just the little pieces of it that I could see. And they have a gift shop. So, but I've actually been to the Grand Lodge of New York building, and even cooler than that, in my opinion, is the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania building in Philadelphia. It's gorgeous. It's just a beautiful facility there. I did not attend lodge there. I attended a lodge in a different place in Pennsylvania, in Harrisburg, where my wife's family is from. But the Pennsylvania ritual is so, I know we did a show on ritual already, but Pennsylvania ritual is very different from Washington ritual. And it was, there are officers we don't have, and there are guys walking around doing stuff, and it was very different. It was really cool to see. I liked it a lot. So you probably noticed that episode ended pretty abruptly in our conversation about travel with Steve and Craig and myself. Unfortunately, there was a technical difficulty, and the rest of the episode got eaten by my computer. So we will have a whole new episode coming up soon with David and not Steve, and we will continue to discuss travel. Thank you for listening to the Working Tools Podcast. Bye.